Hey, ladies and gentlemen, tonight we are here to uncover a truth that many recognize but few dare to speak about. A truth that exists behind closed doors, hidden beneath the surface of seemingly stable marriages. A truth that reveals why married women, despite vows of commitment and years of devotion, often become the easiest prey to external temptations. This is not just about infidelity, it's about the silent struggles, the unspoken desires, and the emotional voids that make so many women vulnerable. It's about the husbands who assume their presence alone is enough, the routines that replace passion, and the quiet loneliness that turns a woman's heart toward the first person who truly sees her. So let us set aside the illusions, confront the realities, and dive deep into the truth about why married women are the easiest prey. Because understanding this truth is not just about uncovering the problem, it's about recognizing the solution. Emotional neglect in marriage is a silent but powerful force that can leave a woman feeling unseen, unheard, and unappreciated. While marriages often start with passion and deep emotional connection, over time, routine, responsibilities, and external pressures can erode the bond that once felt unbreakable. When this happens, a woman may begin to feel emotionally isolated, even if she is physically present in the relationship. This isolation creates a vulnerability that makes her more susceptible to external validation, attention, and even emotional or physical affairs. Many women enter marriage with the expectation that they will be loved, cherished, and valued. In the early stages of the relationship, their partner may shower them with affection, express appreciation, and actively engage in their emotions. However, as time progresses, life's demands, work, children, financial stress, and other obligations often take precedence. Without conscious effort from both partners, the emotional connection can weaken. What was once an exciting and affectionate partnership can become transactional, focused solely on responsibilities rather than emotional intimacy. A woman who feels emotionally neglected may not always recognize it immediately. Instead, she might suppress her needs, convincing herself that she is simply being overly sensitive or that this is just how marriage works. However, over time, the accumulation of small moments of neglect can lead to deep dissatisfaction. When a husband stops noticing the little things, a new hairstyle, a change in mood, or even the effort put into maintaining the household, his wife may start to feel invisible. If she expresses her concerns and they are dismissed or minimized, she may eventually stop voicing them altogether. The silence that follows is not a sign of contentment, but rather of resignation. She may feel that her emotional needs are not important, that her presence is taken for granted, or that her desires for connection and intimacy are unrealistic. At this stage, a woman who never thought she would seek attention elsewhere might begin to feel drawn to someone who provides what she is missing. It often starts innocently, a friendly conversation with a coworker, an online connection, or a casual exchange with someone who takes the time to listen. When she speaks, this person listens intently. When she shares her frustrations, they validate her feelings. When she laughs, they acknowledge her joy. This contrast between what she experiences in her marriage and what she finds in this new dynamic can be intoxicating. What makes emotional neglect particularly dangerous is that it is often invisible. Unlike physical abuse or blatant disrespect, emotional neglect is subtle and difficult to pinpoint. A husband may genuinely believe he is providing for his wife by working hard, supporting the family, or being present in a physical sense. However, emotional presence is not the same as physical presence. A woman can share a home with her husband, eat dinner at the same table, and sleep beside him every night while still feeling completely alone. Women who experience emotional neglect may not always act on their vulnerability, but those who do often justify it by convincing themselves that they are not truly cheating if there is no physical intimacy. Emotional affairs often precede physical ones, and they can be just as damaging, if not more. The secrecy, the emotional investment, and the deep sense of connection with someone outside the marriage create a wedge between husband and wife. Once a woman finds someone who fills the void her husband has left, it becomes increasingly difficult to resist the temptation of further involvement. Social media has amplified this issue significantly. A simple message from an old friend, a compliment from a stranger, or a casual flirtation online can quickly develop into something deeper. When a woman feels emotionally neglected, she is more likely to seek affirmation in digital spaces. She may post photos hoping for likes and compliments, engage in conversations that boost her self-esteem, or form emotional attachments to people she barely knows. These interactions can feel harmless at first, but they often lead to emotional dependence on the attention received from outside the marriage. A crucial factor that many husbands overlook is that women rarely stray solely for physical reasons. Unlike men, who may be more prone to seeking physical excitement, women tend to engage in emotional affairs because they are craving a deeper connection. They want to be heard, understood, and appreciated. When they do not receive this from from their spouse, they become receptive to others who offer it freely. Preventing emotional neglect requires active effort from both partners. Husbands must understand that love and connection are not things that remain intact without nurturing. A woman who feels consistently valued, appreciated, and emotionally connected to her husband is far less likely to be drawn to another person's attention. Small gestures, a kind word, an unexpected compliment, a genuine conversation can make all the difference. Ultimately, emotional neglect is one of the leading reasons why married women become vulnerable to external influences. It is not always a conscious decision. Rather, it is often a gradual shift that happens over time. By the time a woman realizes she is emotionally disconnected from her husband, she may have already developed feelings for someone else. In many cases, this could have been prevented if emotional needs had been acknowledged and addressed earlier in the marriage. Recognizing the signs of emotional neglect and taking proactive steps to restore connection is essential to keeping a marriage strong and resilient. In many marriages, a sense of security and routine develops over time, leading to an assumption that certain boundaries will never be crossed. When a woman becomes emotionally or physically involved with someone outside her marriage, one of the underlying factors is often the lack of fear of consequences. This does not mean she is consciously seeking to betray her marriage, but rather that she believes she can engage in certain behaviors without facing significant repercussions. This perception can be influenced by various factors, including her husband's behavior, societal attitudes, and her own experiences within the marriage. One reason a woman may feel little fear of consequences is the stability and predictability of her marriage. If she believes her husband is deeply committed and unlikely to leave, she may assume that even if she is caught or if an emotional affair is discovered, the marriage will survive. Some women have witnessed friends or relatives navigate infidelity only to see the relationship continue as if nothing happened. If she perceives that her husband is passive, forgiving, or emotionally dependent on the marriage, she may believe that any potential fallout will be minimal. This belief can make her feel emboldened to explore emotional or physical connections outside the relationship, thinking that her actions will not lead to any real consequences. Another factor that diminishes the fear of consequences is the emotional distance that may already exist within the marriage. If a woman feels neglected, unappreciated, or disconnected from her husband, she may begin to rationalize her actions by convincing herself that she is not truly hurting him. She might tell herself that since he does not seem emotionally invested in her, he would not care if she seeks attention elsewhere. This self-justification allows her to engage in behaviors she might have previously considered unacceptable, as she no longer perceives her marriage as a source of deep emotional fulfillment. Technology and social media have also played a significant role in reducing the fear of consequences. With the ability to communicate discreetly through encrypted messaging apps, private social media accounts, and anonymous online platforms, women may feel a sense of security in their actions. The digital age has made it easier than ever to maintain secrecy, reinforcing the belief that an emotional or even physical affair can be hidden indefinitely. The more private and controlled these interactions feel, the less risky they seem, further diminishing any fear of getting caught. The lack of immediate consequences also contributes to this phenomenon. Unlike physical infidelity, which may be more difficult to conceal, emotional affairs often develop gradually and subtly. A woman may not feel that she is doing anything wrong at first. A friendly conversation turns into regular communication, then into an emotional connection, and eventually into something more serious. Because the changes happen over time, there is no single moment where she is forced to confront the reality of her actions. Instead, she becomes increasingly entangled in the new connection, believing that as long as she remains careful, she will never have to face any real repercussions. Additionally, societal attitudes toward infidelity and emotional affairs have shifted over time. While cheating was once universally condemned, modern culture often portrays it with nuance, sometimes even sympathy. Women are frequently told to prioritize their happiness, seek fulfillment, and not settle for an unsatisfying marriage. These messages can subtly encourage the idea that if a marriage is not meeting a woman's needs, she is justified in looking elsewhere. When infidelity is normalized or even romanticized in media and popular culture, the fear of consequences diminishes further. A woman's personal history and experiences can also shape her perception of consequences. If she is engaged in behaviors in the past that went unnoticed or unpunished, she may feel confident that she can do so again without repercussions. Similarly, if she has seen other women navigate affairs without significant fallout, she may believe that she can do the same. The longer she engages in secretive behavior without being caught, the more emboldened she becomes, reinforcing the idea that there are no real consequences for her actions. Ultimately, the lack of fear of consequences is not necessarily about a deliberate desire to hurt one's spouse. Instead, it stems from a combination of emotional dissatisfaction, perceived security, societal influences, and and the ability to maintain secrecy. The danger of this mindset is that it allows small boundary crossings to escalate over time, leading to situations that were never originally intended. In many cases, women who become emotionally or physically involved with someone outside their marriage never imagined themselves in such a position. However, once they convince themselves that their actions are unlikely to result in serious consequences, they become more willing to engage in behaviors that can ultimately threaten the very stability they once relied upon. Emotional neglect in a marriage is often an invisible force that gradually erodes the foundation of a relationship. It does not happen overnight, nor does it always manifest in dramatic conflicts or heated arguments. Instead, it creeps in silently, leaving a woman feeling unseen, unheard, and unimportant in her own home. At the beginning of a marriage, there is usually a strong emotional bond, with both partners making an effort to nurture the relationship. Compliments, affection, deep conversations, and quality time are abundant. However, as life progresses, responsibilities take over, and without intentional effort, the emotional connection that once thrived can fade into the background. Over time, this lack of emotional investment creates a sense of loneliness even within the confines of marriage. A woman who feels emotionally neglected does not always recognize it immediately. She may dismiss her feelings, telling herself that she is being overly sensitive or that this is just a normal phase in marriage. However, emotional neglect is not about occasional disagreements or temporary periods of distance. It is about a persistent lack of emotional support, validation, and connection. When a woman shares her thoughts and feelings and they are met with indifference, dismissal, or a lack of engagement, she begins to feel insignificant. When her efforts to create intimacy, whether through conversation, affection, or shared experiences, are consistently ignored or rejected, she starts to believe that her emotional needs do not matter. In many cases, emotional neglect happens not because a husband does not love his wife, but because he assumes that providing financially or being physically present is enough. He may believe that his role as a provider is sufficient to fulfill his wife's needs, failing to realize that emotional connection requires more than just shared responsibilities. A woman who feels emotionally abandoned may begin to withdraw, not out of resentment at first, but out of exhaustion from trying to reach someone who does not seem to notice her efforts. This withdrawal can create a cycle where both partners become more distant, further widening the emotional gap between them. As this emotional void deepens, a woman may start to seek validation elsewhere, even if unintentionally. It may begin with small things, enjoying a conversation with a coworker who listens attentively, feeling a sense of appreciation when a stranger compliments her, or engaging in online interactions that make her feel noticed. These seemingly insignificant moments can feel intoxicating because they provide what has been missing in her marriage: attention, appreciation, and emotional engagement. She may not actively seek out these connections, but she becomes more receptive to them when they arise. The contrast between how she feels in her marriage and how she feels in these external interactions makes her realize just how emotionally deprived she has been. Social media plays a significant role in this dynamic, offering an easy escape for women who feel emotionally neglected. A simple message from an old acquaintance, a casual compliment on a photo, or an engaging conversation with someone who seems interested can quickly become a source of emotional fulfillment. Unlike the predictable interactions in her marriage, these new exchanges feel fresh, exciting, and affirming. What starts as harmless communication can develop into something deeper, leading to emotional dependence on the newfound attention. The more she invests emotionally in this external connection, the more distant she becomes from her husband, creating a greater divide in the marriage. One of the most dangerous aspects of emotional neglect is that it often goes unnoticed until it is too late. Many husbands do not realize their wives are emotionally suffering because there are no overt signs of conflict. A woman may continue to fulfill her roles, take care of the household, and participate in daily routines without openly expressing her dissatisfaction. However, internally, she may feel disconnected, lonely, and unfulfilled. By the time she acknowledges these feelings and seeks comfort elsewhere, she may have already developed an emotional attachment to someone outside her marriage. Women are not usually drawn to emotional affairs or external validation because they are looking to be unfaithful, but rather because they are looking to be seen and valued. They want to feel that their emotions matter, that their presence is cherished, and that their partner still finds them interesting and desirable. When these needs are not met within the marriage, the risk of seeking fulfillment elsewhere increases significantly. Unlike physical infidelity, which is often impulsive, emotional affairs develop gradually intimacy and can be even more difficult to break away from because they fulfill a deeper psychological and emotional longing. Preventing emotional neglect requires effort, awareness, and intentional connection. Husbands who assume that marriage will sustain itself without emotional investment risk losing their wives to the subtle yet powerful pull of emotional validation from others. Simple gestures, listening attentively, expressing appreciation, engaging in meaningful conversations, and making an effort to understand emotions can make a significant difference. When a woman feels emotionally fulfilled in her marriage, she is far less likely to be tempted by external attention. Emotional neglect is not always dramatic, but its consequences can be profound. It does not always lead to infidelity, but it does create the conditions where a woman is more vulnerable to outside influences. Many women who find themselves drawn to another person never expected to be in that situation. They simply reached a point where their emotional needs were unmet for so long that they became receptive to someone who recognized them. Addressing emotional neglect early and making consistent efforts to maintain emotional intimacy can prevent a marriage from falling into this silent but destructive pattern.